The quad-core diode Megatrode teraflopper is now ready.
The Sandwich Book Club.
I used to know a console cowboy. He worked for a dozen guys. One of them found out about it and beat him up so bad he ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
I'm in. Hey, it's Dusty.
And it's Daniel.
And welcome to the Sad Boys Book Club. We're going to do something a little different today. So I had this idea yesterday I told you about. I thought it'd be really fun to essentially give each other a statement that is probably like a little goofy or a little unnatural. And the goal is to write something like a scene or a situation or a little small story, nothing super crazy long, and you have to naturally incorporate the phrase that the other person gave you into it and make something somewhat coherent. So I had that idea. I figured it'd be a fun little thing to do, and Daniel, you were more than happy to oblige me on that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty fun. Did you? I don't know. What is this? This seems almost like I don't know. It reminds me of like creative writing classes I've taken, where you kind of come in and you have like a prompt and you like write for the something like that.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim that this is any form of original thought. It's just something I thought about while I was at work yesterday. But yeah, I just figured it'd be fun. And you and I have been talking many times over the last couple of months about how we were both wanting to get back into our writing and whatnot. So I feel like this is a fun way to kind of dip our toes in a little bit. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you everybody for obliging or indulging us rather as we work out some flash fiction that we scripted this morning.
Yeah. So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to?
Whatever you're feeling.
I'm curious to hear yours first. So I will. Did you use on or in? I should ask.
I think on.
Okay. So the prompt that I gave Daniel was, "That doesn't belong on my pants."
All right. This is "That Doesn't Belong on My Pants," a cyberpunk tale. All right. That's it. That's our infiltration point. Which one? The one with the tritium plate? Of course the one with the tritium plating. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. That was out of line. I forget I was nervous on my first job, too. It's okay. Two figures stood atop the Telcrest Tower, the fourth largest building in Nuevo Los Angeles, and the one with the weakest security for at least 10 miles. Getting past the robot working the door had been so easy. It literally could have been done by anybody so long as they could keep reasonably cool when questioned by the hulking metal behemoth that was shaped like a silverback gorilla with gun barrels sticking out of its shoulder. Which, to be fair, was no small task. But it was somehow still running a GPT model AI, which hadn't been updated in decades at this point. Those things had hallucinated so much that they basically couldn't tell the truth from a lie if the fate of the world had depended on it. The two men started to walk into the building when they were immediately greeted by, "Attention! The building is closed. Please exit the premises." The ancient metallic Oldham ground out through staticky blown speakers as they entered the well-appointed and chic waiting room. "Good evening," said the older of the two men dressed in jumpsuits and hard hats. We're the city inspectors here for a mandatory unannounced inspection pursuant to NLA Building Code 197-B. The boxy LED displays the robot had as eyes, an affectation the designer had hoped would humanize the robot, but in fact had done the opposite, rolled as it tried to access a server. In just that moment, the younger of the two clicked his pen twice and absent-mindedly scribbled something on his clipboard. This seemingly innocuous action emitted a field that dampened all wireless communications in a 9-foot radius. The robot's request timed out, and it seemed to be trying to formulate something to say when the younger man spoke up. Hey, sorry to rush you, but we've got 6 other buildings to hit tonight. We can leave if you want, but you'll incur a fine and we'd still have to come back within 24 hours. I do not have any appointments scheduled for this evening. Right, well, yeah, see, that's the thing. These aren't scheduled. We can't tell you ahead of time. The robot shifted into a more directly threatening posture and began to lower the barrels. Please exit the... Hang on, chimed in the older man, who presented him with a badge that had a picture of his face and a QR code. The young man clicked his pen again, restoring the connection. The robot leaned in to scan the badge and came to a jerky halt. Suddenly, the slight smell of an electric fire sparked off and the robot moved no more. Its hard drive locked up and encrypted in less than a second after scanning the QR code leading to a ransomware site. Wordlessly, the two made their way to the elevator, ducking their heads and trying to keep camera exposure to the absolute minimum. But there was no more time to remember, and there was a tight schedule to grab the target and meet the contact. If they weren't at the drop-off in 30, there was a good chance they wouldn't be paid, or worse. You ready? The young man asked. Let's go, came the old man's reply. They ditched their clothes and sprayed them down with a rapid decay agent to eliminate all traces of their hair or skin flakes. Now, mostly naked, they made their way through the chilly evening air and opened a non-functional AC unit and put on their infiltration kits. The older man walked over to the anchor point of the lime green Telcrest sign and attached his end of the zip line. He licked and put his finger into the air to feel the wind speed and direction before firing his grapple gun, which traveled over the busy but ignorant street and punctured the concrete just above the tritium-plated door across the road with a satisfying clack. The two men swiftly rappelled across the street and landed right beside the target building's rooftop entrance. They threw off the packs and opened the kits they had on their back and put on the digimasks and mixed a reagent they poured over the handle and where they estimated the deadbolt would be. In a moment, the reagent had eaten through the door materials, exposing the mechanism to open the door. Reaching in with a rod designed for this exact purpose, they popped the latch open and walked in. They had rehearsed this in VR for months and had no trouble finding the vault room in an innocuous office hallway 3 floors down, on the interior side. What they had not been able to simulate was the material that the vault was made of. After concocting stronger and stronger formulas, they eventually ran out of chemicals. The older of the two motioned, indicating that he would need to speak. The young man gave the confirmation in return. Look, we struck out on the chems. We don't have too much longer before somebody spots our entry point and knows what's going on. It's going to be hot, but we just need to blow this thing and get out. Okay, I agree. Great. Glad you approve, the old man said with a smirking look, just visible in his mostly projection-obscured eyes. Take these, he said, and handed the younger man a handful of small round pellets. What are these? Those are tick bombs. You need to scan the safe, look for the weak points, and then place them there by pressing that button on the back. They'll latch on using some spikes. I've programmed them to detonate on my signal. While you take care of that, I'll try to secure the exfil. He slapped the younger man's behind as he walked away. The younger man found that strangely overfamiliar, but didn't really have the time to worry. He pulled the scan gun from the pack left behind and held it over the safe. 2 minutes until completion? Fair enough. His mind began to wander. His partner hadn't bothered to inform him what they were taking, but he figured with a take of $5 million new dollars, some discretion was warranted. His mind flitted excitedly as he earmarked his take. He could finally put a down payment on a condo in the Central District. He could finally buy an engagement ring for Gabriella and have the wedding paid for. He also would have just enough for one more night with a particular lithe e-girl he frequented in the Crimson Lantern District. Just one more time before he got married, and then the scanner pinged and startled him back to awareness. He dutifully stuck the ticks where the scanner indicated, holding them against the wall and then hitting the button causing them to bite down. The older man ran in clutching his side. Hurry up and blow this thing, we need to move. The younger man saw he was bleeding from what looked like a knife wound and began to speak. Now! He pushed the buttons and with a surprisingly quiet series of cracks, the safe lurched up into the air, propelled into different directions as the individual charges fired in tight but distinct intervals before falling back to the ground open. The old man reached in and grabbed a tube that had partially rolled out. "Over there!" a voice rang out in the halls. "Let's move," the old man groaned. And even though he was clearly in great pain, he ran to the door with surprising speed. The older man ran to the prepped window and rappelled down. "Stop!" a shrill voice behind the man called out, very close. How did he get the drop on him? Without thinking, the young man fell back into the security guard. The guard was taken totally by surprise by this and tried to hold him up, even though one of his hands was holding a pistol, and began trying to make a citizen's arrest when the young man grabbed onto his hand and then the gun, wrenching them with an efficient, brutal motion, and then a crack before the young man turned around and pointed the gun at the wailing security guard. "Sit. Stay." The guard said nothing, looking up with fear, pain, and hate. The younger man, too, rappelled down just in time to see the older man pulling an ancient woman wearing a leopard skin print dress out of her self-driving SUV. Just as he tossed her to the ground, he spotted the young man. "In!" As they hopped in, the SUV jerked into the lane as the younger man programmed the drop-off point. No one spoke on the way back, save for the curses of the older man, who grunted as he used his trauma pack to stitch himself closed. "Listen, when we get to the drop-off point, I need you to make yourself scarce. Dad, you're a rookie, and the boss doesn't deal with rookies. I took a huge risk taking you with me. In fact, I only did this because you needed the help, and you're my son. We'll talk about this later." "Where are we gonna meet?" "At my apartment tomorrow. We'll talk then. I know you probably have some questions." "Okay." The SUV slowed as they approached the slum-like block of apartments, and the old man hopped out. Later that evening, the younger man could not stop shaking, his ears always straining to hear a siren or loud tromping footsteps from either corporate security contractors or SWAT's High Security Response Rapid Task Force. A chill passed through him as he recalled their motto. Shoot first. Ask questions never. That's what the detectives are for. He tried heating up a bowl of ramen, but it was no good. He couldn't eat. His stomach hurt, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Finally, he decided that he would just take a shower. He made his way into the bathroom where he looked at his haggard face and began to undress. His pants hit the ground with an unfamiliar click, like something hard had been attached to the new material cloth. He stooped down and picked up his pants and squinted as he studied them. All of the blood drained from his face as he recognized a flashing tick bomb in the seat of his pants. All he could muster was a feeble, "That doesn't belong on my pants." The bomb replied, "Beep, beep, 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 click." And that's it. That's the end.
Given that I knew what the prompt was, since it was a phrase that I gave you, as soon as you established the tick bombs, I was like, well, that's going to be what's on his pants. And with the butt slap, I was like, well, there it is. There it is on his pants. So,
yeah, I mean, there was no way to really make it a surprise because you knew what it was, but I figured it could at least be an amusing way to get there.
Yeah, no, that was really good. You've once again reminded me that you are a much better writer than I am.
No, but I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, that was fun. You put way more effort into that than I expected, and it's gonna make my story look really subpar in comparison. I texted you this. I thought this was going to be like a 2-3 minute long little section here where we just like a piece, 2 or 3 minutes a piece, I should say. My thing's 2 pages.
Yeah, I know I should have made mine shorter. I don't know why, but it just really that shouldn't be on my pants. Really inspired me for some reason. So I don't know why. It just the story just popped into my mind.
No, I'm really happy
basically
with that.
Fully formed.
That's fantastic. I'm really happy that you took that and ran with it. That's great. I love that. And how topical to make it a cyberpunk setting. Yep.
I don't know. It was a little bit the road left over from the road in my mind. A little bit cyberpunk from Neuromancer that we're doing this week, and a little bit of that old Dusty Magic.
Yeah, when you said that that was his father, I was like, oh, there's the road.
Yeah, and I thought that it was kind of a fun twist to kind of be like, did his father try to kill him? Was it an accident? Leave that in the reader or the listener's mind to decide what they think actually happened there.
Yeah, that was cool though, man. That was great. That sounds like a great prologue to a cyberpunk story.
I don't know. I might have to repurpose it someday. It was a lot of fun.
Definitely keep that in your back pocket.
All right. What did you come up with?
Yeah. Do you wanna give them what my prompt was?
Oh, yeah. Let me. I think I basically remember it. It was. I have a very soft spot for malapropisms. Just in general. Like that's one of my favorite aspects of watching, like The Sopranos, for example, is when they say something. Basically, a malapropism is just a phrase that sounds like a different phrase, but I don't know how to put it. How to best describe it. So it's like saying something like bon apple tea instead of bon appetit. That kind of thing. It's like it's usually done by when someone doesn't know exactly what the phrase is, but they've heard it and they're trying to use it for themselves. So here's the phrase. I'm not sure what you think I am, but I know that I took you for granted, and that changes today. Here's the differences: granite versus granted. And I don't know I also noted, as long as you can work in the malapropism, it counts, in my opinion. Let me know if you need a different one. So, I guess let's see what you came up with.
Yeah. Depending on how this goes, since you know my style and you know you've read some of the things that I've written, you might be able to see the turn coming, if the turn comes. That'll make sense in a little bit. So yeah, this is mine. Once again, the prompt, I'm not sure what you think I am, but I know that I took you for granite, and that changes today. All right. Larry sat, distant and still wiping the tired from his eyes, in front of a soggy bowl of cereal. Only 2 days from Friday, he told himself. He started at the sound of the bedroom door opening and looked over to see Sam enter the kitchen. She was dressed and ready for her morning coffee before running to catch the L to work. Slow start this morning? She asked him. Larry barely uttered a grunt in response. His mind faded back into his half-lucid fantasies while mindlessly scooping spoonfuls of the wet, soppy grain into his mouth. He was snapped back into reality once again by Sam, this time touching him on the shoulder. Did you hear me? Larry blinked in confusion. Sorry. Sam sighed, but smiled warmly. I made you lunch today. She held out a paper bag toward him. Larry nodded, sheepishly, and took it. Looking inside, expecting a simple sandwich and a small baggie of potato chips, his eyes widened. Sam had surprised him, something she hadn't done often in the last few years. Inside the bag were 2 fully cooked chicken breasts, each nestled between pillowy, fluffy buns of freshly baked ciabatta bread. He could almost taste the juices of the sliced tomato snugly pressed into the poultry. The cut of the arugula almost brought him to tears, placed intentionally as to protect the porous and absorbent bread from the moist tomato. His sandwich would stay firm and unmolested by the sogging decay until he was ready for it. That wasn't all, though. Sam had taken it upon herself to add in a container full of sliced and baked potato wedges. He could see the individual crystals of sodium chloride reflecting the light from above. His mouth began to salivate at the sight. Reaching in and moving aside the contents, he found one more treasure, anxiously waiting for its discovery. Larry looked up at Sam in amazement. You made cake? He asked. Sam chuckled and moved aside so he could see the tray behind her. The large cake, coated delicately in a thin chocolate frosting, looked buoyant and moist, as if patiently waiting to be delicately consumed. When did you have time to make all of this? Last night, Sam replied, while you slept. This must have taken you hours. Sam chuckled. It did. Larry couldn't see past the makeup, but he knew there had to be gray bags under her eyes. Did you sleep at all? He asked. A bit, she sighed, looking out the window wistfully. But I'll be okay. She took a big gulp of her coffee and smiled again. Larry felt like he was looking at Sam for the first time again. Her features glowed in the morning light, each inch complementing the other. Even her flaws looked as though they augmented her beauty. Larry felt the deep reservoir of love inside of him he had thought ran dry years before, filled to the point of spilling. "I'm not sure what you think I am," Larry said, "but I know I took you for granted, and that changes today." Sam froze. The smile that had come so easy to her turned halfway into a frown of confusion. "Come again?" "I said I've been taking you for granted, and that changes today." They stood there for a long moment. Larry became uncomfortable as the seconds dragged on, threatening to become a minute. Then, Sam began to laugh, almost hysterically. "Did you say for granite?" she choked out between fits of mirth. Larry looked surprised. "Yes?" Sam shrieked and began laughing even harder. She had to forcefully set her cup of coffee down as not to risk spilling any more of it. "Granted," she stammered. "It's taken for granted." Larry could see tears forming in her eyes. They ran down her face, staining it with makeup and revealing the gray under her eyes. Soon her voice became high-pitched wheezing and low pig-like snorts. "And here I thought I was marble." She screeched like a vulture at her own joke, and fresh tears replaced her spent ones. Sam doubled over, clutching her side and shaking. "All right, Daniel, here's the turn. Choose your own adventure. There are 2 endings to this story. Number 1, the path of least resistance, or number 2, the path of change."
Yeah, I almost want to like drop a save here and try both of them, but if that's not on the table, let's make it juicy. Let's go path of change.
All right, I'm going to reread the last little bit and then go into the path of change.
Okay.
She screeched like a vulture at her own joke, and fresh tears replaced her spent ones. Sam doubled over, clutching her side and shaking. Larry looked on her, disgust filling his eyes. Reaching over, he grabbed a knife from its home in the wooden holder and stood up. "Sam," he said. She raced up and looked at him, still trembling from her fit. She didn't see the swing of his arm as he plunged the knife deep into the side of her neck. Sam's eyes reflexively widened to their fullest. Her mouth fell open in confused terror. She tried to scream but barely managed to gurgle. Red mist sprayed onto Larry's arm, but he didn't take notice of it. He began to twist and saw with the knife, cutting and pulling against the flesh, muscle, and bones of her neck. It was hard work. The knife hadn't been sharpened once since purchasing it. But soon, he felt the resistance of her flesh give way. With a final tug, one hand holding her head by the hair, the other with the knife, Larry succeeded in separating Sam's head fully from her body. He placed her head down onto the kitchen counter and stared at the red stump, shooting a weak fountain of life out into nothing. Larry smiled. No, definitely not granite. Then he began to laugh.
Wow. that was a huge tone shift. I was not prepared for that.
You want the
that was what is it called? Doki Doki Literature Club style tone shift from like cutesy domestic stuff into like full on terror and violence.
I felt like I had to do the snazening in it.
That does have snazening vibes.
Yeah. Do you want the path of least resistance?
Sure. Let's have the path of least resistance.
All right. Once again, I will reread the last bit before going into path number 1. She screeched like a vulture at her own joke, and fresh tears replaced her spent ones. Sam doubled over, clutching her side and shaking. Larry sighed. "Are you done?" Sam took a few deep breaths and sat back up, wiping her eyes and staining her fingers with the ruined makeup. She only hiccuped and nodded at him. "So much for that," Larry muttered as he grabbed his lunch and left. Maybe that well wasn't as full as he thought it was.
No happy endings there.
That's not a sad ending. That's just him being like, "I love you," and her laughing at his stupid joke and him being, or his stupid phrase, and him being like, "Ah, yep, all right."
I know that's still pretty pessimistic.
Well.
Question: What the gray that you were talking about, is she actually? Well, she can't be made of marble or granite because she got her she kind of got her head cut off.
That's the gray
eggs.
bags under her eyes.
Okay.
From not having slept.
Gotcha. Wow, that was quite a twist. That was a little bit American Psycho in one, and then a little bit I don't know.
American Beauty in the other.
American Beauty. There we go. That's a good way to put it. It's I don't know. That was pretty good. I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You have a good sense for writing those like little domestic scenes.
Can you tell that I'm a fan of King?
It was very King. It was very King. Like I was kind of reminded me a little bit of like I don't know. And what was the one I most recently read? Pet Sematary.
Oh,
Pet Sematary. That was it. Gave me like the conversation. I know you haven't read Pet Sematary yet, but have you read Salem's Lot?
I don't. I have not. I have it. It's on my bookshelf behind me, but I haven't read it yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, it had a little bit of that King domesticness to it as well. Like when you're talking about those scenes.
I should say my serious writing is not that dark. This is very much. I do this as a very tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, as morose as, or morbid as that sounds. No, that's not my serious writing. My serious writing does not devolve into such acts of depravity. Though maybe one day I will give a live reading of the aforementioned The Snazening, because that was a really fun short story I wrote over the course of like 3 hours on a Sunday like 3 years ago that I sent to you. That I had so much fun with it. I think I had just gone on a binge of It, The Stand, Misery, and The Dark Tower in like no particular order, and I was just feeling very Stephen King, and I was like, I want to write something that's just really out there. And I'll just say the premise of it for right now. The premise of it is Daniel and I have this coat. It's the snazzy coat, and this is the snazening, and Daniel wants the coat and will do whatever it takes to take it from me. That's the premise.
Yeah, that one was a wild ride. I'll be interested. Maybe someday, if there's enough interest, we can bust it out.
Yeah, it was a fun one. But yeah, this was a little idea that I had yesterday at work that I was like, it'd be really fun if maybe not necessarily every week, but every now and then we kind of throw in a little quick. We wrote this week. Ideally, we won't give ourselves only 1 day of notice for it, maybe upwards of a week or so. But every now and then be like, hey, here's a writing prompt we gave each other. Here's a line. I already have the second line I want to give you in my head already. I came up with it last night. It's actually something I said last night while playing Zelda, and I was like, that's really funny. I need to use that as a prompt.
Well, sounds good. We may be... I'll have to come up with another one, too.
Yeah. So anyways, once again, welcome to the Sad Boys Book Club. We're on to the book club section of this one now. We are reading Neuromancer by William Gibson.
Yes. This is one that I've been... when we first talked about having the book club, this is one of the ones that most immediately sprang to mind as one that I wanted to do, because I've always wanted to read this book. It is... I mean, I would say it's probably the foundational text for cyberpunk, the cyberpunk genre. And also a lot of like for example, the cyberpunk tabletop game / I guess video game, Cyberpunk 2077. They draw pretty heavily from this and Blade Runner, are basically the two origin points. I think you can trace just about everything back to those two.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of 2077 was influenced, or if it was just a straight rip or not rip, but a loose adaptation, because one of the place where we start in this novel is Night City, which is the location for Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, that's something that I also noticed. Maybe I could run that down later, because I didn't, but I definitely took strong notice of it while we were reading. I don't think that it's an adaptation of per se, but I do think it is pretty heavily influenced.
Yeah, doing some research for this book before I got it, I learned that I might get this a little wrong because I just kind of gave this a cursory glance. Either there's a character in this, because this is a trilogy of novels, though I don't know if they're completely connected in terms of like we're following Case across all three. I don't know. I don't know anything past what I've read. But I think that at some point there's a character by the name of Johnny Mnemonic, and that character, and maybe the book, I don't know. Once again, I kind of gave this a cursory glance, was the inspiration for the movie Johnny Mnemonic starring Keanu Reeves, which, if I remember correctly, was also partially influencing Cyberpunk 2077, and one of the reasons why they pulled Keanu Reeves for that game too. I could be wrong
really
on that.
You know, Johnny Mnemonic is actually... Did you know that Takeshi Kitano is in that movie?
I did not. I've never seen the movie, so all I know about it is that Keanu Reeves is in it.
Okay, what a killer cast. Okay, so you got Keanu Reeves, you got the William Gibson. It's a short story that he wrote. Actually, I think this. Okay, according to this, he wrote the short story in 1981, which predates the novel by I think 3 years. I think this book came out in 1984. But Keanu Reeves is in it. Takeshi Kitano, Dolph Lundgren, and Ice-T. They're all in this movie. That is pretty wild. And it's a tight 96 minutes.
Yeah. If anybody is not aware, who Takeshi Kitano is, he did Takeshi's Tower, right?
I think so. I think that was him. I think he also Takeshi's Challenge.
Or was that what it was called, Takeshi's Challenge?
Yeah, that. Are you talking about the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Takeshi's Challenge. He was also in. It's Takeshi's Castle.
Did I say Tower?
Yeah, and I said Challenge. So
we're both wrong.
It was Takeshi's Castle, but he was more famously in Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which is very well regarded. Also has David Bowie. He was in a lot of very well regarded Japanese movies. He was also in Battle Royale, which is probably one of the more well known Japanese movies just of all.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's really good.
He's a great actor, and he was also in Yakuza 6. What great performance in that as well.
Yeah.
Which, one of my favorite game series of all time.
Yeah, and if anybody grew up in the early to mid 2000s and watched Spike TV, you might remember a TV show called Most Extreme Elimination Challenge, or MXC, which was a really poorly dubbed satire of Takeshi's Castle. So you might remember, oh god, what were the hosts' names? It was Ken or Kenny, I can't remember, was the comedic relief one. I forgot what the main host's name was in MXC, but that was Takeshi Kitano was that host.
Oh, I actually never saw the show.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I loved it back when it was on. This was back in Spike TV, just to give you a real frame of reference on how long ago this was.
Good time, good long while ago.
Yeah, so there's our little tangent for now about that. We should maybe watch Johnny Mnemonic sometime. I've heard it is not a good movie, but I'm curious.
I think I would like us to, and this is like kind of maybe a long run goal. I don't know if that's this is something that maybe people would be interested in learning or in us doing. But I wouldn't mind doing film adaptations of the books that we're covering here, or like possibly TV show adaptations. We'd have to be selective about how we did it, but that would be like Johnny Mnemonic would be great for this book particular. I don't think this book has received any other adaptations.
So I have a question for you, Daniel.
What's up?
Is our main character's name Case?
You know, I don't think so. I think they're going for like a very avant-garde thing. They don't use his name or something. I think that's the vibe I get.
You know, Daniel, I think you're right, Daniel. Maybe Daniel, they don't say his name too much, Daniel, but I'm not sure, Daniel.
You know, Dusty, it's just the way Dusty things are. Sometimes, Dusty, when you're writing these things and you have to go on for a while, you need to remind the audience, Dusty, who you are talking to. And so, Dusty, you need to work in the name of the character, you know, just to keep the flow of dialogue going. Does that make sense, Dusty?
Yeah. So for context, almost every sentence spoken to Case in this book seems to have somebody saying his name in it, and I don't want to sound critical, but it's so weird to me. So many times, like, Molly will be talking to him, and she just says his name in, like, every sentence, and I'm like, we get it, your name's Case, come on.
It's you know, it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting where you that you mentioned that, because it's just, you know, after thinking about it, I don't think it's not like when he's talking to other people, he's not like, hey Molly, what are we going to do, Molly? You know, it's just like they'll introduce it in the first time they talk to them, and then maybe they'll use it as like to say like who was saying things like that Molly said, or you know, whatever Lucy said, you know, or not Lucy, Linda, you know, that kind of stuff. But people just really like saying Case, and you know, I gotta say, it is kind of cool. It's like, hey Case, you know, it kind of has a little bit of a flow to it.
Yeah, he's only in the first chapter, but I feel like a similar thing was done with Wage too.
Yeah, I think I think William Gibson just really liked those names.
Yeah. So we read the first 6 chapters of this book. I was so lost in the first chapter, and I think the third chapter as well. Maybe this is just me not having great reading comprehension, and also maybe it's because I was really tired. It feels like a lot of this book so far, not necessarily it being an unreliable narrator or something like that, but it's hard for me to kind of find out sometimes whether things are a flashback or the present or real or not. Like, the scene with Linda dying was so all over the place that I was really lost reading it. I think I grasped what happened, because Molly does kind of explain what happened at the end of that scene, but like it's so, because I know I'm jumping way ahead here, but they're at this underground fighting pit for some reason, and he goes to go get him and Molly food, and then he sees Linda, maybe, but yes, but maybe, and then he drops everything to follow her, but then she's dead, and then there's a kid trying to kill him, and then Molly, I'm assuming, just unloads on them with a machine pistol or something like that. And then the fight that they were watching is over, and they just kind of leave, but then she's dead. And I'm like, what is going on right now?
I think that's partially by design, at least. I think it's supposed to be like overstimulating to a certain extent, you know?
Yeah, and then the first chapter takes place over, is it one night? The entire chapter is like one night?
I think so. That sounds right.
And it's like he goes to the bar. Oh god, what was the bartender's name? Was it Rats?
Rats.
Yeah.
He was in I think it's called Chatsubo or something like that.
Yeah, and he goes there, and then oh god, please correct me if I'm getting some details wrong, because I was really tired when I read this, but I was like, I gotta get started. I probably shouldn't have done this, but I did it. I read it while I was tired, and I figured it's the first chapter, it can't be that long. It's like 20 fucking pages long, and it's 11:30, and I have to wake up at 6:30 for work, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So he's talking to Rats, and then at some point he meets with Linda, who wants money from him. And she's like, hey, Wade is trying to kill you. And he's like, oh, that's bad. So then he goes to talk to some, is it a Korean street vendor guy? And he's like, hey, I need a gun. And the guy's like, 2 hours, man. And then he goes home, I think. And then he comes back and gets the gun. And then he goes back to the bar. Am I getting this right, or am I way off here?
That's basically right, but let's slow it down. Let's try to take it beat by beat, and maybe we'll make more sense of it. So the novel starts with the iconic line. Let me flip to it.
I know it's iconic because I had a foreword from William Gibson in 2004 where he told me that it was iconic.
The sky above the port was the color of television. No, let me try again. The sky above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel. Now, I think a lot of that's maybe a little bit lost to time with the advent of like digital TV and cable TV, and like the basically and the fact and the Zoomers and late millennials that basically do not watch TV. But it kind of captures like the sort of like gray twilight that the city that he is in, Chiba, which I think is I don't think it's in Tokyo. I think it's like I don't want to call it a suburb because it's pretty big in its own right, but it's pretty close. It's kind of like
district?
I don't think it's a district either. I think it's its own thing. It reminds me of like the Twin Cities up in Minnesota, that kind of situation, or like Dallas Fort Worth in Texas, or like New York, Newark, in like one of those kind of places, San Francisco, Oakland, that kind of thing. Maybe not quite to that extent, but the same vibe, right? And so there he's in the bar, and it's like this. So anyway, I should finish my thought about this guy. So it kind of captures that sort of like gray, the sort of like the light to medium intermittent gray that you would get when you would change the TV to a channel that you didn't have signal for. And I think that was very powerful in and of itself to kind of set this world up of like it's night, but there's so much light, there's so much going on, there's so much sensory overload that we don't have true dark anymore. So I found that to be a very interesting and compelling image. But the plot opens with Case at the Chatsubo, which was which was an expat bar. Not too many locals. He goes through and he talks about a lot of people. It's kind of interesting because you see already in this book, 1980, it was written in 1984. It kind of prefigures this idea of like Japan as the sort of like place that's really popular with like travelers and expats. I'm not sure that it was like as big a deal in at that point, because the country itself was really coming into prominence in that moment due to their booming economy, fueled a lot by their electronics, which is something that we kind of see throughout the album. As you see, or not the album, the book. I don't know what's wrong with me. There's a lot of like Japanese made products that you see kind of like layered in there. And he meets a bartender named Rats, or maybe Rats. I don't know. The reason I choose to say Rats is because I think he was Russian. They were talking about he has a prosthetic, military prosthetic arm, so I guess Rats would be closer to like a more Russian pronunciation, but I don't know. And the Rats is then I say that and go right to Rats. He asks him about his business with Cage, or with Wage, who is he's one of the people that Case works for. He's like a black market type of guy, who does stuff of like like underground medical treatments, that kind of thing. And that's kind of like a through line that we see throughout Chiba, right? That's in fact why Case is in Chiba. It's like the surgery capital of the world, in essence. Like he talks about he came here looking to get a certain kind of surgery to repair an issue with his brain that he sustained while performing some sort of criminal enterprise with some guy. So I think that it happened, like he tried to like double cross the guy he was working for, and basically he got hit with like this toxin that made it so that he could not navigate cyberspace anymore. And I think this is really the first time that we see like cyberspace as the concept. Like that's a pretty common trope like now. Like you've seen things like Tron, like The Matrix, like cyberpunk, for example. Like these create this like digital world where like there's like there are constructs that are created out of the data, but are interpreted by the person who is in cyberspace as concrete objects, that kind of thing. So anyway, Case was like a real hotshot. I think they called him like a cowboy or something like that. Anyway, he was really into a console cowboy. That's what it's called. And so he was really into the internet, and that seems to be kind of his whole deal. Like he talks about, he makes several comments. Like he refers to himself as being like in a prison of flesh. Like he seems to have like a difficult relationship with himself outside of the digitalized medium. Like he seems to almost like be addicted to or prefer being within the digital realm rather than the physical realm, which is kind of interesting and in a lot of ways is very prescient, I thought, of Gibson.
Yeah, the on that the writing as a whole is this is not a genre that I am normally accustomed to. Not through a lack of interest, just a lack of, I guess, entry points for me. Mm-hmm. So there's one of the biggest things I've noticed in this is the techno babble.
Yeah.
And a lot of it goes over my head. But it sounds like it makes sense. So I'm just kind of there for it. Like I'm like, sure, absolutely, do those neo diatrobes into your forehead with the things. Yeah. Which one thing I found really funny. I don't remember. Of course I don't remember. I don't know when terms like gigabyte and terabyte and zettabyte and all that came into the general techno lexicon, because I imagine it was before I was born. I do know that the term giga, in terms of like gigabyte or gigawatt or whatever, I know it definitely was not in popular circulation by 1985 because of Back to the Future and them calling it a gigawatt, because that was just a foreign term to them, and they didn't know it was gigawatt and not gigawatt. So I know at the very least in 1985 that wasn't really fully into the lexicon. But I found it really funny when we were reading. I forgot at what point it was in this book, but there's a part where he's talking about like how many things of space something has, or how many like things he can look through, and he says millions of megabytes. And that just gave me a good chuckle, because millions of megabytes to us now would be like what? Just like terabytes? We just say terabytes or something?
Yeah. I think that's kind of that was an interesting thing. We live in the sci-fi future insofar as there are like terabytes, and like everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but it is not uncommon at all for people to have some sort of storage device, whether that's like their laptops, their desktops, like for their work or whatever, their school, or like a PlayStation has like just a game console has like a terabyte in it. At least the standard one I think does. So it's just kind of it was very interesting in that respect. I think like at the time, like something like 20 megabyte was considered like really cool and high end. It's like, wow, how am I ever going to use up all that space? Meanwhile, we're recording a podcast that would blow through that like 10, 20 times over.
Yeah, and even looking at technology in our lifetime and how it's grown even. Looking at, for our childhood, a PlayStation 2 memory card was an 8 megabyte memory card. And that was so much for me. Because the PlayStation 1, you only had 15 slots. I don't remember exactly how big the memory card was. I want to say it was maybe a couple hundred kilobytes. I honestly don't know. But you only had like 15 slots on a PlayStation memory card. And you better hope that game you had did not take up 2 slots like most RPGs did, like Final Fantasy. Otherwise, there's 2 slots gone. And then you get to the PlayStation 2 and you have the 8 megabytes, and you're like, oh my god, 8 megabytes, that's so many. I can fit so many games on my memory card. And then even going from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3, we went from a storage system being 8 megabytes to, I think the smallest one was 20 gigabytes. And that was just an insane jump. And we had, even now to this day, to today, I think my save file for like God of War Ragnarok on my PlayStation 5 is like 100 megabytes or something like that, or maybe even higher. Just the save file for it.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like, I think that's about the same, like 135 or so. That's I think what it is on Cyberpunk, for example.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid playing Grand Theft Auto 3, and that game took up over 1,000 kilobytes on my memory card, my PS2 memory card, and I was like, that's over an eighth of my entire storage space for this one game. That's insane. Because most games, they would cap out around 100, 200 megabytes. Kilobytes, rather, for a save file, and Grand Theft Auto 3 was a whopping 1,000, and now we have games that are 300 times that size with save files up to. So, yeah, technology's insane, even just in our lifetime alone. So I can't even imagine how it would be for someone like William Gibson, who wrote this book in the 80s that was supposed to be this look at the future, look at how technology's going to be with all of these things, look at our millions and millions and millions of megabytes and all this and all that. And when you look at technology today, and I think one of the best examples of that kind of snapshot of idea of what the future is Back to the Future Part 2, because they go forward to 2015, which at this point is 8 years in the past for us, which is just really funny. And you got flying cars, hoverboards. What was it, like Jaws 17 in 3D or something like that at the movie theater?
Yeah.
Self-tying laces from Nike.
I don't know. I still think those would be pretty cool.
They made some. They gave a pair to Michael J. Fox in 2015. They made some specifically like for him, and maybe a couple of others for other people. But so technology does exist, but it's probably not worth the cost right now. But I still thought that was really cool when that happened. And Yeah, I don't know. Once again, I think as has happened many times over the course of us doing this, I don't really know what my point is, but technology's cool, isn't it? Anyways,
You're like the guy at the beginning of every Pokemon game that's like, "Hey, technology's so cool," and then they usually uses it to like promote some feature of like the game, like, "This is technology so cool you can connect with your friends online," that stuff like that.
hey, I got this cool device that I didn't have when I was a little whippersnapper like you. Do you want to see my pictures of Vaporeon?
Oh my god. No, if any adult tries to ask you to look at pictures of a Vaporeon, you need to turn, run, and get the heck out of there.
Anyways, back to what's this book? Neuromancer.
Back to Neuromancer.
I completely lost the plot here.
So Case is still in the bar. He's talking with Rots, and he says that he saw his girl, Linda Lee. I think Linda Lee is well. We can get into that here in just a second. But what's important is that how Case responds, and he's like he doesn't have a girl. So you can see like whatever. So there's this perception of like he and Linda are this romantic item. And then we can see that they've kind of fallen out. And so he's leaving, and as he's leaving, he kind of has like thinks about his life a little bit, and it's kind of a moment that Gibson uses to kind of introduce the character of Case a little bit more. He's talking about. I think he says that he's 24. I want to say he was 24.
Think so. I think you're right.
And but he's already been in this line of work as a quote console cowboy for quite a while. He makes it seem like he's been doing it for many years. This is, I think, where they introduced the idea of like he got burned trying to rip off one of his employers, and they infected him with some sort of like mushroom toxin that destroyed part of his brain and or his nervous system, and that he is not able to hook his brain up to the Matrix anymore. Here's where he talks about. This is a very, very interesting passage here where he talks about. He refers to his event or the event of his losing his ability to connect to the internet, as he describes it as the fall, which is like a very interesting and very loaded term. It's like this almost like being cast out of the Garden of Eden kind of situation. And he also talks about so for Case, who would live in the bodiless exaltation of cyberspace, it was the fall. In the bars he'd frequented as a cowboy hotshot, the elite stance involved a certain relaxed contempt for the flesh. The body was meat. Case felt into the prison of his own flesh. So this is kind of where we get into like this idea of like I don't know, cyberspace and like his addiction to the internet. This man is he's a true forum poster. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing there. So he's walking around this district called Ninsei, which is I think a district in Chiba. He's kind of like walking around. He's kind of musing on life. Like he's kind of fallen into this sort of like drug addiction and this sort of criminal underworld element. Because he did originally came to Chiba with some money to try to find somebody who could work on him and find a cure for his internet allergy. His newfound internet allergy, but to this point in the story, he's not been able to find anybody, and money's run tight. So now he's basically he's hooked on these things called, I think they're octagons, which is, it's interesting that he trades his addiction from like internet browsing to actual drug addiction. I think that's kind of interesting. See, he basically has a very fatalist kind of mindset. He describes himself as being on more or less an arc of self-destruction. And he talks about that he's kind of gotten sloppy in his criminal dealings. Basically, in a subconscious way to just kind of like to kill himself, right? I don't think he cares about life anymore. And he talks. That's when he thinks he's still thinking about Linda Lee after he talked to the Rots guy in the bar, and he kind of walks away, and he remembers when he met her in an arcade and how they kind of met, and they had this initial connection, and unfortunately, like it didn't, things have not really worked out for her because as she kind of got involved with him, she kind of fell into the similar patterns of drug addiction as he did, and I don't know. That was pretty sad. He had this very very tragic way of putting it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, here we go. It took a month for the gestalt of drugs and tension he moved through to turn those perpetually startled eyes into wells of reflexive need. He'd watched her personality fragment, calving like an iceberg, splinters drifting away, and finally, he'd seen the raw need, the hungry armature of addiction. He'd watch her track the next hit with a concentration that reminded him of the mantises that they sold in stalls along Shiga, beside tanks of blue mutant carp and crickets caged in bamboo. So all in all, pretty bad boyfriend, I would say. You get your romantic partner hooked on drugs. That's really, really scummy behavior, and I'll leave it at that. But anyway, he's in the present moment. In the present moment, he sees Linda Lee again, who she comes up to him, and she kind of hits him with real heads will know the pain of like, hey Case, good buddy, the good buddy, when you get in the true that kind of greeting from a prospective or former romantic partner, especially when you're not over them, that can sting you a little bit.
Yeah, it is the romantic kiss of death.
Yeah. But anyway, he meets her, and they talk a little bit. She kind of shows some residual concern from him, but she says, "You sleeping okay, Case? You look tired." And so we can kind of see that he is basically at his low point. He's I'm sure a lot of people have known people with substance abuse problems. He kind of has that sort of addiction sort of pallor, a little bit of like the gray face, the exhausted look, that kind of stuff. Anyway, after some little trivialities, she says that Wage wants to meet her, or wants to meet him. So, Wage, she said, narrowing her eyes, he wants to see you with a hole in your face. So she's basically delivering this message to him that he needs to look at, and I think that's something that him and Rots had talked about a little bit. Like this idea that he's being hunted, so it creates this vibe of like paranoia and intention. Anyway, she kind of like shows like a little bit of concern for him, but it's pretty clear that she's also doing pretty bad. She's pretty bad. She looks like she needs a fix. And so he gives her some money to go get that. She tries to demur and to let him keep it, but he's like, no, I owe him a lot more money than this. It's not gonna be it's not a big deal. And so they kind of he gives her the money, and she eventually just kind of takes it. And then they kind of part, and that's pretty much the last we see of Linda Lee. Until we see her as a corpse, or a soon-to-be corpse, a few chapters hence. So he's walking through Night City. He's he feels like he's gonna be hunted down. So he tries to he tries to talk to a guy named Julius Dean, who is a smuggler that he also has business ties with. Who's like crazy old. He's like 135 years old, but like he's doing like all kinds of serums and surgery, and he probably has like a blood boy or something on the side, some kind of crazy situation. So he's like 135, but he looks like he's like fairly early middle age. So he talks to him, and there's this little exchange that it isn't always easy to know who your friends are. And so that's another kind of like theme, right, that we see not just in this book in particular, but cyberpunk and also cyberpunk, the tabletop and the video games and all that. So they talk about it, and then he's trying to get intel on what Wage wants, but Wage, because Julie works with Wage, he's not able to tell him much. So, there's a little bit of the back and forth. It's all just kind of, if you've ever read any, like, especially like noir, Raymond Chandler style fiction, there's a lot of scenes like that where there's just like a little bit of like two guys like playing cagey with each other and having these conversations, and maybe not a lot happens in the moment to moment sometimes. And I can imagine some people finding that frustrating or feeling like there's a waste. But it really, what it does is a great job of establishing atmosphere and of like creating something that usually down the line is going to result in something. So I thought that was very interesting and very indicative of the debt that this owes to like Raymond Chandler and that kind of stuff. But anyway, he walks out of there and he realizes he's got a tail on him. And so he sees the tail and he tries to go rent a gun, and that's what Dusty was talking about. Where when he went to the guy and he asks him to try to rent a gun, he's not able to get it for 2 hours. So what he does, he gets like this improvised like spring loaded weapon, which is which he calls like Cobra, I guess. So he goes and he's looking for Wage, and he can't find him, and then until he feels like he's being followed again. So he runs into this building, and he tries to like tell one of the people that work there that he's being followed, or that to call for security. And so he runs through the building and then kind of like back out into an alley, and then he pulls out the Cobra, and he throws it away, and then he comes back and gets his gun. So basically he has a freak out, and nothing seriously happens. Then he was able to get I think he went back and got his gun, right?
Yeah, I think so, because he does eventually bring it back, and he goes and gets his deposit back after his encounter with Wage. Okay.
And then he goes to what he calls a coffin, which I imagine is like one of those like capsule. Well, I don't know. Maybe like one of those capsule style hotels, something like that they have in Japan.
Yeah, I took it as, I might be wrong here, but I took it as slang for what he basically called, or maybe what the common slang use for what their apartment rooms are, or hotel rooms or whatever, because he's staying at the place. It's called what, cheap hotel or cheap motel or something like that.
Something like, I think it was cheap hotel. I think you might be right. It might be slightly bigger than just like a capsule hotel. I think it might be just like a small rented room. Anyway, he's trying to. So he tries to get back, and he tries to find his computer, and he's trying to sell the RAM in the computer, because he's trying to fence it to save to get some money to pay off Wage. And he's trying to do that, and he goes back to the bar.
Yeah, he goes back to the bar, and he's like talking to rats or whatever, I don't know. I think, and man, chapter 1 was such a blur for me. Wage comes in, and he's like, "Yo, what are you doing trying to kill me, man?" And Wage is just like, "What are you talking about? What? No. No." And that, I feel like that whole exchange just kind of happens. And Rats is, he is defending Case, so he pulls a gun, I think, and starts threatening Wage as well, but more so in a my bar, my rules kind of way. And everything is relatively copacetic, and no real incident happens, and Case and Wage kind of work it out because he wasn't trying to kill him, which is really weird, because why did Linda bring up the fact that he was trying to kill Case, but then he wasn't trying to kill Case? So what was Linda doing? I don't know. I don't think we're ever really told. That's a weird thing that happened.
Okay. I'll tell you why.
Stirring the pot?
Because she was trying to get him out and just get him spooked so she could break into his room and steal the RAM.
Oh, that's right.
Do you remember that?
He goes back and his place is ransacked, right? And that's when he finds Molly, right?
Yeah. He finds Molly there, but he realizes before that Linda stole the RAM in his computer, and he understands. He knows what's going to happen with all that. But that's. Oh, go ahead.
I must have missed that. Like I made a mistake when I started this book. I should have been more awake when I started it. So chapter 1 was a real blur for me. So I missed that with the RAM thing. Is that basically it for chapter 1? He goes back to his apartment. That's stolen. He meets Molly.
He meets Molly, who is like this. They refer to her as kind of like a razor girl, and she's like this. She's like this assassin, like lady. She's got like razor blades, like that are retractable, that can come out of her hands. She got the Wolverine drip. She has like cool sunglasses. She wears like cool black leather stuff. So basically, just picture in your head for Molly, like really cool cyberpunk lady. That you're basically there. And so he thinks that he goes back to the whole Wage thing, and he's like, "Oh, you're here to work for Wage," but she's like, "No, that's not it. I don't work for Wage," and that she's here to pick him up she's here to bring him back to her employer. And that's basically where it ends.
Yeah. And just to move a little quickly, because we were on chapter 1 for a long time. To move a little quickly, he meets her boss, whose name is Armitage, right?
Yeah.
And he's this clearly a veteran of something. I think he says it's like special forces or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was part of this this operation that went bad, or so he says. Oh God, I really should have. I should take notes like you, because I get things like this little wonky. What was it called? Something Fist. The operation.
Wasn't it Blazing Fists?
Something like that. And apparently there were like no survivors, but there was a squad that actually made it out, and apparently Armitage was part of that. And he wants Case to basically be his in guy, because he is putting together a crew as it goes. Granted, that crew is really just the 3 of them, and he wants Case to be his guy, his consul cowboy, to get this thing that we haven't revealed yet. And he has Case go through this surgery that repairs the damage that was done to him by that rival gang. And
Screaming Fist. Sorry, I just remembered it was called Screaming Fist.
Okay, I thought it was something starting with an S. So yeah, Screaming Fist was the name of the operation or whatever. And so he gets Case's bad neuro damage repaired. And here's a weird thing that if this really came out of nowhere for me. Case and Molly get together, and they're, I guess, not necessarily a couple, but they are at the very least associates with benefits right now. And she's living with him. They're having sex a lot, and they're spending basically all of their time together. And that happened, I guess, suddenly. And it really felt like it came out of nowhere to me, because it kind of, if I remember correctly, he kind of loses time I think this was immediately after the surgery. It could have been, I could be mixing this up with something else. But he like loses time, and he's like kind of in a haze of like recovery where he doesn't quite remember everything, I guess because of the drugs. And he's laying in bed with her, and she's at least half naked. And then they just kind of have sex after she starts giving him a massage, and that's just how we're introduced to the fact that they're not really an item, but they're at least associating, to put it one way. And it's like, all right, sure, I guess.
I think it kind of reminds me a little bit of, and I apologize for all of our non-video game playing listeners and viewers, but it reminds me a little bit of Miranda, right? She kind of has like, because I think that's how she knows him so well. And they talk a little bit about how he's like, how he feels like she knows him so well, and I think basically she has like a psych profile and like all this stuff worked up on him. I think it's just, that's kind of how that works, I guess, at least within her context. That she's very, I don't know. I guess she liked what she saw in his profile and is like, okay, well now we're a thing.
Yeah, sometimes sex is just sex. I mean,
That's true. Sometimes you're just flaring blue in the timeless vast space, a vastness like the Matrix, where faces were shredded and blown away down hurricane corridors.
Exactly.
So,
I hate when I'm in that situation, but what can you do? But yeah, I don't get, at least at this point, I don't get any love or infatuation between the two of them. They seem friendly, and I do think that they at least superficially care about each other at this point, if not because of they're useful to each other kind of way. So I don't think this is, at this point in time, a budding relationship. I think this is just two adults bumping uglies because it's something to do, and they both enjoy feeling good. So, all right, it just kind of happened. Cool, whatever. But oh god.
So he goes to talk to Julie.
Yeah, they go to go see Julie because they're going to be leaving Japan and heading back to. They end up, their final goal is Boston, right?
Boston / Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's all basically one thing apparently now.
Yeah, you can take the tube from Boston to Manhattan and get there in totally fine time. So sure, they go see Julie again, and he's not really trustful of Case because of Molly, and Case is able to convince Molly to just hang back, don't let me go in alone and all that. And the final interaction with Julie was kind of interesting to me because he pulls a gun on Case, and it's more of a, he's like, nothing personal, this is just procedure. Because what's he doing? He's like testing his, like, what was done to him or something.
Well, what he's asking about is stuff like he tries to get information about Armitage, however you'd say it, and then things about Operation Screaming Fist, and like how that's where we learn about that kind of stuff. And Julie is not able to help him with any information about Armitage or Armitage. We need to pick one. And then we kind of get the background of Screaming Fist, which was like some sort of like ill-fated like American attack on some sort of Russian defenses, where there was like the acknowledgement from the part of the government, like they were sending people to die, but they were basically they had no chance to survive, but they were doing it to test some sort of weapons or something like that.
Yeah. So that's basically that for this area. He goes and I guess he got some money from them, and he pays off his debts to Wage and all that. He basically ties up all of his loose ends in Chiba, and then they leave. And there's kind of a blur of travel to where the things happened, but I mean, I don't know what happened, says Case, as he's suddenly in Boston. And I was in Paris. I bought clothing, I guess, because I have new clothing. And
I think well, you're missing the part that you talked about, the fight scene.
Oh, yeah,
going to the fight.
Oh, I totally skipped past that. Yeah, they go. Yeah, Molly takes him to this underground fighting pit. This is while they're still in Chiba, and this is where the whole incident occurs, where Linda dies. And we went into it earlier. It happened. I don't know. It happened. I really just don't know what to make of that.
Well, what happened was she was trying to fence. Okay, so Linda, she was trying to fence the ram. That's why when she bumped into Case at the fight, she ran away from him because she had stolen his ram, and then she was running away, and that's when that she runs and she kind of gets lost in the crowd, and that's when he runs into the let's see. That's when that kid trips him and tries to kill him. So like basically he goes to go get like nachos and a soda equivalent at this underground like fight where these guys are like literally fighting to the death, trying to kill each other with knives. And he goes, he's trying to go get his snack on. He's
basically just like, hey babe, you want a hot dog and a brew?
Basically, and then he bumps into Linda, who realizes, oh crap, I have his stolen RAM and programs and stuff on me. So she runs, and he because he still has his residual feelings for Linda. He's like, well, that's weird, and he tries to go after her. When this kid comes out of nowhere and tries to kill him, like an actual child, like a little demon child, tries to like stab him. But then Molly, I guess she was wondering like, where's Casey? He's taking a long time to come back with the nachos.
Where's my chicken on a stick? Damn it!
Oh, that's right. That's true. That she was getting yakitori. Some like correct for their cultural milieu. And so she comes up with like this little gun that shoots like it's called a Fletcher. It shoots like all kinds of things. I think it can shoot like darts and bullets. It's like a multi-purpose gun. So she comes up and she airs out the kid. Like he's dying, and then Case is talking to her, and he's still looking for Linda. I wish I could go. I probably should go back because I don't know why he separated from Molly after she killed that kid. Maybe he was just trying to look for Linda, and he runs back into her and she says, friends of your tight friend killed your girl for you. So it was, and that was how Case had referred to Julie earlier, as he referred to him as a tight friend. And it turns out, so what happened was Linda was trying to meet either Julie or his agents like at the fight to fence his stolen RAM, and they decided it would just be easier to kill her and then just pay for it. So they kill her, and that's it. Really, that's the end of chapter 2. That's the end of Linda Lee.
Yeah, and that's so strange to me because as I read the scene, I could be reading it wrong because I apparently have read some of this book wrong because I have such a weird mindset going into this book, and I think it's affecting my comprehension of it. This is a me problem, not a book problem. It doesn't feel like anything happened about Molly murdering these people or Linda being murdered. It's very much just it's just a thing that just kind of happened, and I guess that's just a business as usual thing, and nobody really cared because there was no consequence, there was no fallout. It was they have the little thing where she was like, friends of your tight friends had her killed. By the way, the fight's over. Let's go. And
yeah,
that's
one of the things that they meant. That's kind of indicative of, well, not indicative. That's one of the things that's about this particular experience in Chiba is like there's a lot of like death and criminality that goes almost completely unremarked upon. Like I think Case even mentions in passing that he's killed like 3 people.
Yeah, he's killed people for drugs or something like that. Like it's like, man, this is not an endearing main character, is it?
No, it's all pretty scummy world.
Yeah. It is Night City.
It really does have Night City vibes.
Yeah.
So they get to that's what now we're at where you were talking about, where they went to like Amsterdam and Paris and all that.
Yeah.
And he receives a gift from Molly, the paper wrapped shuriken.
Yeah.
The which is something he was looking at a store in Chiba before he was able to get a hold of the gun.
Yeah. And so now we kind of get the plan, what the plan is with Armitage and what this is supposed to be. So the general idea of it is Case was trained by this guy named McCoy Pauly. That's who he was trained to be a cowboy for. And he has they called it what was it, a what flatline? It's called a dead flatline.
I think they just called it a flatline.
So there's this thing called a flatline, which is, as I understand it, someone's skills and consciousness uploaded as an AI onto an object. Is that like something that you can jack into? Does that sound about right to you?
I'm going to be honest, I am completely lost. I don't know what you're talking about at all.
Oh. That complicates things. So as I understand it, it's basically like a it's almost like a mimetic clone of a person.
Are you talking about a construct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about when they talk to that guy, the Finn.
No,
right?
I'm talking about what they're trying to steal from the place. What was it called? Netscape? SenseNet. Yeah, the thing they're trying to steal from it. It's the Pauly's his flatline.
I think that the construct of Dixie Flatline. That's what you're talking about.
Yes. So yeah, as I understand it, it's basically this AI that was created as a sort of mimetic clone of the person who's target, and it has all of their skills, all of their knowledge, their memories, and their personality. And Armitage wants it for some reason. It's based off of the dude that trained Case to be as good as he is as a console cowboy. That's their thing. They have to steal it, and Case is reintroduced once again to the Matrix, but they also have to go to this guy named the Finn, who is someone that Molly brought into the job, and this was okay. So they go to his place, and he sets up this thing where they lift a wall up and like Velcro it down or something, and it's I guess a safe room that makes it to where if there's something that Armitage is doing with Case and Molly to keep track of them, overhear their conversations and whatnot, this is a way to bypass that, to throw some static in there so they can talk freely, because they're not Finn is supposed to be meeting Case then later on, and this is something that she's kind of doing behind Armitage's back because she's got her own kind of thing going on, and they're trying to figure out who he is and who's backing him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this comes after Armitage tells Case that the contingency plan to make sure that Case works for him is he put these microbes into his bloodstream that will eventually decay and detach, and they contain the myocin or something like that, neuromycin,
the mycotoxin.
The mycotoxin that will basically put him back to where he was before the surgery, and the only way to be cured of it is to get an enzyme from Armitage that will counteract it, more or less. So that's his "we did this for you, now you do this for us or else" kind of thing. It can't be picked up in scanners. So they meet with the Finn, and then they go back. What was the meeting with the Finn for? The first one?
The first one is where they established all that stuff that you're talking about. The second was to get access to. He gets access to this thing that I think they called it a stim, which is like a way to get like access to someone's like thoughts and their like feelings. So he is like attaching himself to her. He's able to experience things from her consciousness as though they're happening to him.
Yeah, he's able to jack into Molly, so to say. So
yeah,
he goes back and now he's going to have to start working on the job itself, where they have to I forgot the name of the company again. ScopeNet.
SenseNet, yes.
So now he's basically working on the firewall, which is he calls it, actually it's like an ice wall or ice. As he has to chip through the ice walls to get to SenseNet's thing so that they can pull their heist. So he spends 9 days doing that, and now they're ready for the heist itself, and it's going to be this multi-stage thing where Case is going to be the man in the chair who's doing all of the hacking and the doing all of the system side things, and then we have these people that we were introduced that Molly got on board. What were they called? The Moderns. They're called Moderns.
The Panther and Moderns. They sometimes refer to them as just the Moderns.
Yeah, who were cyber terrorists, or are they just terrorists?
They are. Case describes them as mercenaries and practical jokers, and also nihilistic techno fetishists. So they're essentially just like they're just a group of like mercenary hackers.
They're like cyberpunk rock anarchists.
Well, no, because they don't have any like political viewpoint. They just do things just to do them. Like if you anybody can hire them.
Yeah, I just want to do the cyberpunk rock thing though.
Okay, fair enough.
So they have these really cool like octo camo suits, for another video game reference there. They have these suits that they're chameleon suits, and they just blend to things. That's really cool. I really like that technology, and they use them to blend in and hide. And so we have this group of mercenaries. Like the leader has like pink hair, which is like super super ostentatious, and they go into the building, the SenseNet building. A couple of the Moderns, and they're disguised against the wall, and they're basically the eyes. And so what the general plan is Case is going to hack in, and at the same time, they have this all has to go within 20 minutes. They have a 20-minute timeline here, and so the Moderns are throughout the city at different points, or throughout the tri-state or something. They're going to call the cops and tell them that there was an outbreak in the ventilation system of the SenseNet building of this gas agent that turns the people that are infected in it into paranoid and violence-seeking people. So they're supposed to spread that to the cops all at once, and then they also, a little while later, do this hack into the SenseNet building itself, where they hack all of the screens, and they do this subliminal message static image video that plays over them, and it puts them all in a frenzy, because now they're thinking that there's something wrong in the building, and this gives Molly, who is infiltrating the building, a way to get in and down to where the flatline is. And we have Case going back and forth between getting into Molly, jacking into Molly, and watching everything and feeling everything that she's experiencing, and then going back into the cyberspace and doing the things that he needs to do. In the meantime, he's doing a back and forth, and things kind of go slightly wrong. Not like wrong, but like Molly encounters a little more resistance than she was expecting, and so she has to fight a bunch of guards, and one of them breaks her leg. So when Case switches back to her, he's experiencing all of those feelings and all that pain. But she's fine. It's just a minor setback, all things considered. And the plan more or less goes off without a hitch. She gets the flat line. The cops are surrounding the building, and they're just murdering the employees because the employees are trying to escape because they think there's something going on in the building, and the cops think that all of the employees have been infected with this nerve agent that's turning them into savage psychopaths. So they're just like gunning them down with like riot control, and the Panthers, or the Moderns rather, help Molly escape. They get out. She goes to get repaired, and heist successful. Congratulations, we did it. Simple as that. Which I was expecting this to kind of be the crux of the book. No, it was one chapter. So good job, Gibson. I thought this would be a whole plot line, and I mean it is, but I expected it to be a huge thing. But it was one really fun chapter, and that was it. I was like, neat. That's awesome. I really liked the heist. It was cool.
That was very cool.
So after the heist, Molly gets her repairs. Case is just doing his thing. He's like, I gotta get out of here. So he starts walking around, and he meets the leader of first he meets with Armitage, and the leader of the Moderns. I forgot his name.
Yonder Boy.
And Yonder Boy's being a little cute, and Armitage isn't really like taking it, and Case is like, just pay him. You don't want to make an enemy out of this dude, just pay the man. So because Armitage wants Molly, because Molly has the flatline, he's like, you have my girl. And Yonder Boy's like, I mean, she's fine. She's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, we're not going to do anything. Just pay us. And Case is like, yeah, just pay him. So he gets paid. And so Case is like, I gotta get out of here. So he leaves to go walk around to just and Yonder Boy comes back and encounters him again. And he's like, I got a message for you. What is it? Wonder Mule? Wintermute. I was really close. He's like, Wintermute. And that's confusing. Okay. And then he just leaves. He fades into the night. And so Case meets back up with Molly, and he's like, hey, I got a message for you, Wintermute. And they do their whole routine of getting back to the Finn so that they can talk freely. And apparently Wintermute was the identity of whatever is funneling money and paying for Armitage and this whole operation. And it turns out that Wintermute is an AI that's being controlled by what was it? Tessier
Ashpool essay.
Yes. Is it Tessier or Tessier?
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter. We'll just say Tessier. And so it's this really big company that the Finn is like, oh, well, I've got a story for this. And we learn about the Finn had this other fence contact named Smith, I think, right?
Yep, that's right.
And Smith knew this man named Johnny who brought him this bust that he...
It was Jimmy, I think.
What'd I say, Johnny?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking Johnny Nemec. Oops. Jimmy, rather. And he brought him this bust that he had stolen. And Smith was like, this is something big. And then he encounters a ninja, sneaks into his place, and he's like, so something of my employer's was stolen. And Smith...
Not just anything. I just want to throw out that they describe him as a vat-grown ninja.
Yeah.
So like a clone assassin boy comes into your office.
From seemingly out of nowhere, and he's just like, so something of my employer's was stolen. And Smith, who is probably the smartest character in this book so far, was like, yup, I don't want to die. Here you go. You can have it. I don't want to be a part of this. And the ninja guy's like, how much were you going to sell it for? And Smith, continuing his extremely high intelligence, gives the ninja a number far lower than what he was going to ask for, because I don't think he wanted to tempt fate in the slightest. And the ninja's like, hang on. The ninja was like, there you go. It's in your account. Who gave this to you, by the way? And Smith's like, Jimmy, it was Jimmy? Absolutely. Oh, it was Jimmy did it, Jimmy. And the ninja's like, have a nice day, and leaves. And then Jimmy's found dead a little later. And Smith's like, I'm good. I tempted fate. I'm done. I'm have a nice time, the Finn. I'm out.
That is the perfect time. You know, you always see in fiction and in real life to a certain extent, but in fiction, like they just hang on, just one more job, and then that's what costs them. Brilliant idea by Smith by getting out of that moment.
Yeah, I'm not
smartest
being sarcastic.
character. No, I know you're not. I'm just saying, like, possibly the smartest character, not just in this novel, but like maybe top 10% just in general. Too many guys getting sucked in by the just one last job racket.
Yep, and Smith got a good payday out of it, all things considered. So, yep, and that and it turns out that ninja worked for TASA, is that how the shorthand for it? Terrier Ash.
I think they just called it TA.
Yeah,
I think that was the shortened version.
So he works for TA, and yeah, there's something going on here that is a little more suspect than what we think. So
yeah.
That night, Case jacks into the flatline and talks to McCoy.
Anyway, yeah, it was he jacks into he connects to the construct, and he kind of gets the sensation of someone reading over your shoulder. That's when he realizes he's connected to something, and he calls out to his friend, and his friend answers, and it's interesting. He tries to talk to him, and he doesn't seem to have any memory of anything. He just seems like almost like a blank slate. Despite he basically just knows who he is, but he doesn't seem to have much memory beyond that. So he's disconnecting and reconnecting, and he's finding that the construct does not remember their previous conversations. So they talk a little bit more, and then he explains that he's a wrong construct, and that he asks for his help in getting Armitage's data, and Dixie's like, well, I guess I don't really have much of a choice. And that's basically the end of the chapter.
And yeah, that's about where we're gonna end it here. So yeah, next week we're gonna continue on with Neuromancer. We're gonna learn what Case found out about looking into Armitage, and we're gonna go from there. This is a really, really interesting book. I didn't know what I was expecting because it's 1980s cyberpunk, and like I said, cyberpunk was not a genre that I was hyper familiar with outside of what you would expect, things like Blade Runner or Cyberpunk 2077, things like that, kind of like broad, general cyberpunky kind of thing. I had never read any cyberpunk novels. I would, in that vein, I'd love to read Philip K. Dick, who do electronic, or what?
Do Android Stream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah. I've always wanted to read that, which was the inspiration for Blade Runner. So this was all kind of new for me, at least in terms of in a literary context. And as I said earlier, the techno jarble, it sounds cool. I don't know what it means, but the characters know what it means, so that's good enough for me. And it sounds neat when you read it, and you're like, yeah, that's the technology, woo. So this is a cool book. This is a very cool book so far.
Yeah, I've been very much enjoying it so far too. All right, I guess that'll get us for this week. We're wrapping it up there. But thanks for joining us for another episode of the Sad Boys Book Club. I am Daniel.
And I'm Dusty.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care.